Yeah, welcome back to the channel and welcome to my bedroom. So a lot of you have been asking for me to do a video on my thoughts and feelings with regards to my experience in Doha for the World Cup. So that's what I'm going to do. So first and foremost, before the World Cup started, we had this media narrative from the British media. They'd constructed this narrative around Qatar not being a safe place, with regards to their laws, their beliefs, there being no alcohol, etc, etc, etc. And my honest opinion is, having been there, the media got it completely wrong. Okay, and of course everyone's going to say, oh, 6,000 people died, da 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 da. Actually, if you look at the statistics, there wasn't 6,000 deaths, but those deaths that are being talked about are throughout the whole migrant population that have been living in Qatar since 2012. So that's bus drivers, train drivers, restaurant workers, but you know, heart attacks, strokes, normal everyday migrant workers who live there. Okay, these people weren't all on the construction sites. They were just normal everyday migrant workers that were living in Qatar at the time. So all those deaths have been recorded, as they would be. They're just normal people, but they weren't all on the construction site. So that again was misinformation. I think it was 5,000 and something people have died since 2012, as I said, of the migrant population, but they weren't all just workers on the construction site. Some of those were people that had been there for many years, people in their 50s, 60s, 70s, heart attacks and strokes and all the rest of it. So that was misinformation to start with. Anyway, moving on from that, let's talk about the accommodation. Again, the first thing I saw when the World Cup started all over social media were people uploading pictures of these cabins at the fan zones. These shipping containers, these old shipping containers that were out in the middle of the desert. And there was no food, and the food that was being served was cold burgers at $25 a time, or whatever people were saying. And actually, I didn't see any of that, and I stayed at one of the fan zones, the free fan zone, and I stayed in one of these shipping containers, and I had absolutely no issues. There was aircon, there was a mobile aircon unit, there was a fan, there was electric, there was power points, there was a bed, there was a hot shower, it was clean, it was everything you need. I think the only issue, if I'm going to be picky, if I'm going to be pedantic, was maybe the price. They were nearly £200 a night, but having said that, it's a World Cup in the Middle East. You're going to pay a premium. You're going to pay a little bit more than we would pay in the UK or other places, because it's the Middle East and because it's a World Cup. I remember, excuse me, I remember working at an event down in South Wales for the Champions League several years ago, and we were staying at a campsite, and that was £80 a night to pitch your tent on a campsite. So again, I think it was unfair criticism, and the media had gone out of their way really to find people that had perhaps had a bad experience, because I didn't see any of that. The food at the fan village, the food was great. You know, there was a Starbucks, there was several burger places, there was a falafel place, there was Arabic food. And again, yes, it was a little bit pricey, but we're talking about a World Cup, and we're in the Middle East. People go to Dubai and spend £3,000 or £4,000 on a holiday for a long weekend, and nobody complains. And actually, who built Dubai? How was Dubai built over the last 25 years? By a migrant workforce. You know, so again, the likes of these pundits, Gary Lineker and so on, who were sat on TV complaining and saying that the World Cup shouldn't be in Qatar. You've only got to put Gary Lineker in Dubai into Google, and you'll see him on holiday, pictures of him on holiday in Dubai. And Dubai was built by a migrant workforce. So for me, it's complete hypocrisy from the start, from the get-go. And that was part of the reason why I wanted to go there, because I wanted to see it for myself. So yeah, so the fan village, absolutely fine, but perhaps a little bit pricey. So moving on from the accommodation, we then have the transportation around Doha. So they'd actually built a metro system specifically for the World Cup. And it was brilliant. You could get on it at the airport, and then it would go to various different places around the city, and all those stops, all those places, those stations were very near to a stadium, apart from, I think it was the Al Bayt Stadium, which was at the end of the metro line. But then you could get a shuttle bus, and the shuttle buses were they were just there all the time. You could jump straight off the train and straight onto a shuttle bus, and you'd be at the stadium within 20 minutes. Other than that, I could get to pretty much any stadium, any World Cup stadium from where I was staying at the fan zone within an hour. So again, when you look at it logistically, the World Cup was perfect. You didn't have to travel 4 or 5 hours across the country. You didn't have to travel to a different country or to a different state. All the stadiums were in one city. So for me, that was absolutely fantastic. It was so easy to travel between the games, to and from the games. So again, why this wasn't reported, I don't know. Probably because it was one of the positive factors about the World Cup. And of course, the media don't want to talk about anything positive to do with Qatar.